Hey, Spuddies, Potato McWhiskey here, and welcome to a Civilization first impression of the 3 new leaders for the Egypt Leader Pass. We've got 3 new leaders. We've got Sundiata, Keita, I don't have to say that, and Cleopatra, Ptolemaic, and Ramses II. So let's start off with Ramses. I think Ramses has been in a lot of Civilization, and his leader ability is Abu Simbel. So he gains 15% of the construction cost when finishing buildings and 30% when completing wonders. This is, I would say, actually a pretty damn good ability. And a really simple way to think about it is, if you make about 10 production in your city, you're getting about 1.5 culture per turn, which is pretty reasonable. But more importantly, you get it when you finish it. So I think there's some really interesting things you can do where you time the finishing of all your buildings right as you get a boost. Like you get a boost and then you finish all your buildings to finish a thing really quickly. I think there's some kind of things, there's really interesting mechanics you can take advantage of when you're playing Ramses to hit particular timings on certain techs. I think that's going to be really advanced tech and not really used in anything other than speedruns. But at the very least, this gives Egypt a interesting gameplay mechanic, especially because it combines really well with Itaru and the Sphinx, right? Itaru gives you a 15% production boost towards your districts and your wonders. More important is the wonder part there, because you get 30% of a wonder. Like think of something like Mausoleum. I think it's like 400 production for a Mausoleum. So 30% of that is like 120 culture. And let's say you get that on around turn 120. That's as if you just got 1 culture per turn for that whole game for building that wonder. I don't think there would be a lot of people who would turn their nose up at a 1 culture per turn bonus. And that's just for building a single wonder. So I think this has a lot of potential. Now, the production bonus only applies on plains, or sorry, on rivers, not on flood, not on plains, on rivers, but it also combos really nicely with the Sphinx, because the Sphinx gets +2 faith if it's next to a wonder, and faith is one of the most powerful cultural yields, right? Faith is just the yield you want to get when you're going for a culture victory. Faith and culture are, two sides of the same coin. They're both incredibly powerful, incredibly useful, and they really help you win a culture victory. And the Sphinx is just supercharged, man. +1 faith, +1 culture, +2 appeal. The appeal is awesome for building up certain districts, for building up certain things. If you can get your hands on city-state buildings that scale off of culture, or if you can get down national parks, you can do some really, really interesting work with the Sphinx. So how would I rate Ramses II's power level? I don't know if I would put him very high on the power level. I think he's, at the very least, if we compare him to the default Egyptian Cleopatra, I would say that in general, Ramses' ability is a lot better because you don't have to have a lot of trade routes to benefit from it. It's helping you a lot. Whereas Cleopatra, her ability, you kind of need to have trade routes to really take advantage of her ability when she's in the Egyptian form, which is why I kind of like the way that the new Ptolemaic Cleopatra works, because now it's your resources that are along floodplains receive +1 food and culture, and owned floodplains tiles grant +1 appeal to adjacent tiles instead of the usual -1. Oh, I misunderstood this ability. This is actually a lot worse than I thought. I thought that her ability was that all floodplains tiles got +1 food, +1 production, and +1 culture. So this is actually a lot worse than I initially thought. The floodplain tiles granting +1 appeal to adjacent tiles instead of the usual -1 is interesting because she's breaking a rule, and the appeal of those tiles is usually really bad. So maybe you can actually find a place to include floodplains tiles in your national parks, or potentially just having really high appeal in your empire for things like, I think this makes Earth Goddess quite viable on Cleopatra. I think this makes, Earth Goddess and maybe more appeal-based plays. The Sphinx, I feel like this actually leads really nicely into an Earth Goddess Cleopatra play. I don't know if I think of this as being incredibly strong. I think this is, the thing with this is it's really RNG. If you get like 4 wheat in your capital, this is amazing. Whereas if you get no wheat in your capital, I would rather be Ramses, right? So this feels like a little bit RNG, and it feels like floodplain tiles are already in pretty high demand for things like aqueducts and dams and industrial zones and camp or commercial hubs and wonders. So having really high appeal on your floodplains tiles, I guess it could help out in some of your secondary cities that are settled on floodplains, but I don't know if I find this to be the real game breaker. At the very least, you can make some really cool and powerful tiles, right? With the combination of the watermill, with the combination of this ability. So that's +2 food on farming resources on floodplains, as well as +1 culture. You could potentially go for plantation culture if you have a lot of sugar. Yeah, I would definitely say, I would say personally that I think Ramses and the Ptolemaic Cleopatra are like roughly on the same power level, depending on the RNG of the spawn, is what I would say. It really depends, because like a +1 culture per turn is really damn good. But if you can get like +4, maybe +5 culture per turn in your first 2 to 3 cities, that's really damn powerful. Whereas long term, I would much rather have this if I don't get those abilities. But early culture is like super powerful. So it's kind of hard to really say which of these two is better. I would say I put them on about the same power level, and whoever is better in a particular game is going to be entirely down to what kind of start you roll. I definitely feel like the old Cleopatra is just a straight up downgrade most of the time. The exception is maybe if you're in a team game playing multiplayer and you want to do trading. If you're doing a team game multiplayer trading thing, then the Egyptian Cleopatra is clearly better. So now we have to compare Sundiata Keita with Mansa Musa. So let's take a look at Sundiata Keita. He has his unique ability is called Sogolon, right? It costs 20% less gold to recruit great people, and the market gains 2 great works of writing slots. Great works of writing receive +4 gold and +2 production. That is kind of insane. That's like a lot of gold in production. To put that in perspective, a mine that you build as Mali will give you +4 gold and plus no production. And then when you get workshop tech, apprenticeship, it'll be +4 gold and +1 production. And then when you get industrialization, it'll be +4 gold and +2 production. So basically, when you're playing Sundiata Keita and you get a great work of writing, you're basically getting a late game apprenticeship industrialization boosted mine in your city, which is kind of actually blowing my mind with how powerful this is, especially if you do some really interesting things like get yourself a couple of early wonders with great works of writing slots. You spend gold to buy those great works of writing, either via great people or from other players. And here's the thing, you still have all the most important parts of the Mali, right? Your city centers gain +1 faith and +1 food for every adjacent desert and desert hill tile. So you have that really early growth in desert, and you have that really early faith in desert, allowing you to secure a really good pantheon early, potentially depending on what your land looks like. You still have the Suguba. You still have the penalty to production, which kind of sucks, but you still have the Suguba, which is amazing. It's like an amazing district. Like Mali, I would say the 2 strongest civs in the game are probably Mali and Russia. And if I take a look at Mansa Musa's ability, international traders gain +1 gold for every flat desert tile in the origin city. This is good, right? Like this is a really, really good ability, but it's also kind of situational, whereas this is like way more reliable. So I would probably rate Mansa Musa like a little bit more powerful than Sundiata Keita, but I would say Sundiata Keita has like a really consistent power level, and also the ability to move power around inside of his empire with those great works of writing. And also, I feel like Sundiata Keita leans more heavily in towards a culture victory direction, which I think Mansa Musa already leans in pretty heavily. But what I really like about this ability is one of the big problems with the culture victory, right, is if you're a culture civ, you need to build your holy sites, and then you need to get your theater squares, okay? And that leaves you with very little gold. But the problem with Mali is you need to get your holy sites, then you need to get your commercial hubs, and then you need to get your theater squares. So your theater squares come so late, and by the time you start generating great writer points, you're behind the AI or other players. It's like, you're in a rough spot. With Sundiata Keita, you get your market, you save up, you buy a great writer, boom, boom, you fill that market with 2 great works of writing. You might not even need to go to theater squares immediately. You don't feel like you miss it. And then when you do get your theater squares, that's just more room for great works of writing. You can shuffle them around. You can I'm building a wonder in the city. Let me just put 4 great works of writing in here. Let me build there's so much potential here. I'm omega hyped to play Sundiata Keita. I am omega hyped. In fact, I'm probably going to go edit this, upload it, and then immediately start a live stream so that I can go play it. I love you all very much, and I'll see you guys next time.